All right, Mr. Chair, if you can hear me, you should be able to go ahead and get it started.
Okay, thank you, Blake. Can you hear me all right? Okay, so welcome to the January 9th edition of the Iowa 911 Communications Council. Just a heads up, I am not in wonderful Dallas County, Iowa right now. I'm actually in Dallas, Texas, where things are not so wonderful. So if I should lose my internet connection, which would be quite possible with this ice storm, I would authorize Kara, our council secretary, to continue on with the meeting while I try to get connected again. So with that, could I please get a motion to, well, rather, Kara, could you give us a roll call, please?
Yes. Chris Jasper,
Jasper's here.
Jeff Miller,
Here.
Mike Bryant,
Here.
Eric Daw,
Here.
Rich Mazioli, here. Josh Duden. Here. Rob Dennert is absent. He's excused. Adam Welp is also excused. Is Ethan on, his alternate?
Yep. Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Could I please get a motion to approve today's agenda?
Do no motion.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, same sign. And motion carries. Likewise, could I get a motion to approve the December 12th, 2024 minutes?
Lynn, motion to approve.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Jasper will second.
Any discussion? All those in favor signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Against, same sign. Motion carries. Blake, do you have a report?
Can you confirm that you can see my slides?
I can see your slides.
Perfect. And I will get started and turn it immediately over to John Parker from Department of Management. John is, you're probably familiar with, does a lot of the budget work. So we've been talking about for a number of months, having him come on and do an abbreviated budget 101 type of training for the upcoming 911 budget season. So John, if you can hear me, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Blake. And I appreciate the invite to be here. Hopefully everyone has maybe started thinking at least about their budget or preparing some documents to get ready to put into the budget system. It's open now. And if you need access, you can just send me an email with your ANA ID. That's typically that's typically your first name dot last name at Iowa ID. If you need access to your budget. You can go to the next slide there, Blake, and the next one. I just kind of want to give a brief overview of kind of the timeline. I did release the budget forms in November. So typically November through March, in April, you're filling out the budget, you're publishing that notice for that public hearing that you have to do, and you're holding the public hearing, and then you're adopting the budget. And then next slide. So your budget is due April 30th. This was changed. This is the second year of that deadline being April 30th. That's when budget documents are due to the county auditor. And keep in mind, we only extended that deadline for another publication requirement for cities, counties, and schools, but you kind of got lumped into that extended process of having your budget due a little bit later. There's really no reason for you to wait until April 30th to get stuff done. So I encourage you to get done as soon as you think is reasonably possible, because getting done early does allow you time, potentially if the newspaper messes up your publication, to do it again and still meet that April 30th deadline. So if you could, you used to have a March 15th deadline. I'm not saying you need to have it done by March 15th, but just keep in mind, if you can get it done and if it fits into your schedule a little bit better to do it on the early side of this year, that would be great. And essentially all you're submitting to the county auditor is your adopted budget summary, just what comes out of the budget system, your surcharge and operating fund tabs, and that proof of publication that you're going to get from the newspaper, or your affidavit sometimes is what it's called. Next slide. And keep in mind that notice of public hearing of what you're putting in the newspaper, it has to follow that 10 to 20 day rule. That's very important, because if you're 9 days, if you're 21 days, what's going to happen is the county auditor is going to get that document and they're going to be checking this. This is one of their checks. and they're going to say, hey, this 911 board, they didn't follow that 10 to 20 day rule, or it didn't even get published in the newspaper, they're going to make you go through that process entirely again in order to meet that 10 to 20 day publication requirement. So that's very important. It's even so important that we'll make you do the budget again, and this may have happened to some of you in the past. If the newspaper messes up and we don't catch it until after April 30th, you'll have to do your budget again after April 30th, and you'll just be a late budget. There's no penalty, so it's not a huge deal. And you want to keep, there's a publication calculator online that you can use to help you calculate these days. But here's a quick example. If you have your publication date is on February 2nd, the first date that you could have your hearing is on the 12th, and the last valid hearing date is the 22nd. Go to the next slide here. So like I said, that publication date calculator is within the budget system. If you're editing the budget, it'll be at the top right of the page, and you'll see that once with it, you're within your budget. And keep in mind that a quorum must be present, and a quorum must be present to obviously adopt your budget, but also at that public hearing. Typically, they'll be at the same meeting, or you'll have the public hearing, and then you'll go into your regular meeting and where you actually adopt the budget. And keep in mind, following that public hearing, after the public gets a chance to speak, you can adopt essentially your control line, or the control that we kind of speak about is expenditures. You can adjust revenues. Revenues come in and higher or lower throughout the year, but expenditures is kind of what you're explaining to the public of how much you're going to spend for that upcoming fiscal year. So you can adopt the expenditures the same of what you published, or you can actually lower those expenditures that you publish in the newspaper. You can't adopt expenditures higher than the amount that you published. If you find yourself in a situation where you maybe missed a number, or you missed an expense when you're publishing, you would have to republish again in order to adopt that higher expense amount. Or what you could do is the next fiscal year, once the next fiscal year begins, you could amend your budget. And I'll talk a little bit about that later. So you do have two funds. Most of you just have that surcharge fund where you deposit surcharge revenues, and you have expenses strictly, code specifies what you can spend that surcharge fund for. So that's specific to that. If you do get other revenues, you can use that operating fund and have a little bit more freedom of the expenditures out of that operating fund, rather than have it just be tied to those surcharge revenues. So most of you are just using that surcharge fund, but I've seen more and more people start to realize that the operating fund is there, and you can use that as well. But be careful. I did speak to someone yesterday. You get confused. Oh, I did this stuff twice. I entered in expenditures and revenues twice, and that's because they were looking at both funds. So you may only need to worry about one. Go to the next one. So yeah, once you're in the budget system, you want to, of course, edit fiscal year 2026, and you use that little edit button in order to get in there and start editing your budget for this upcoming fiscal year. And keep in mind, so what we're starting with is essentially June 30th of 2024 is actually, so the fiscal year ends, and then that becomes your beginning fund balance. That becomes your beginning fund balance for fiscal year, the actual fiscal year that started in fiscal year that ended at July 30th, 2024. So it's the ending balance for fiscal year 2023 becomes your beginning fund balance in fiscal year 2024. So sorry, that's a little confusing. So, but that's what you're looking at. That's what you're starting with. You're starting with an actual year. So these actual numbers are probably coming from your county auditor. So what you ended fiscal year 2023 with is what you start with your beginning fund balance. It may be splitted between reserved, assigned, and unassigned, but for the most part, you probably have all unassigned fund balance. So what you're doing is you're starting to put in that actual year of fiscal year 2024 of revenues and expenditures to get you started in the budget. Go to the next slide. And then, of course, we do have separated out the landline and wireless surcharge. So you have to have, this is one of the few checks I actually do have in there. Make sure you include both both revenues for each of those separated out. If you put it on landline and all in wireless, it's going to throw an error. So make sure you have numbers in all 3 of those years for both of those revenue sources. And then this is where I do get quite a few questions about is, well, you know, all of my fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. And so this is on the expenditure tab. So at the end, you'll start to see, okay, how did I end this fiscal year? And this should match where you ended June 30th of 2024. So you'll see you can't edit your unassigned or your total ending fund balance because those are in white. Anything that is editable is in blue. So what you can do is, in order to take money from your unassigned fund balance into your assigned balance, you know, that has to be an action. Assigned fund balance is the lowest level, so that can just be something that maybe you're reserving funding for as an administrator. But in order to be restricted or committed, that would be a board action or some other grant or something that you need to have within that balance. So it takes a little bit more action on the board or committed funds for another purpose. So in order to get that money out of that unassigned fund balance, in terms of the budget form, you know, of course, takes a few actions on your part, whether it be the board or administrative action. You would just put in the amount that you want to assign and put in reserved, and then it automatically lowers that unassigned fund balance, and that total ending fund balance still should be the same. So that's how you move money into assigned and reserve. You just put in the amount that you want to have in that. And you don't have to use, you know, a lot of people just have unassigned fund balances, and that's fine. You can just keep it as unassigned and least restricted. The next slide. And so keep in mind, all of these balances kind of flow from one year to the next. So we have the expenditures where you ended. Essentially, this kind of shows the expenditure tab where you ended June 30th of 2024. That flows into your then beginning fund balance for fiscal year 2025. So that's how that kind of flow works. And if you say, oh, my beginning fund balance doesn't look right in fiscal year 2025, well, that's because you probably needed to do something on the expenditure tab for 2024. So that kind of how all that information flows from the expenditure back to the revenue tab for the subsequent fiscal year. Go to the next slide. And I just want to keep this in mind. If you do use this publication date calendar, it's a great resource to double check your counting of days. This does not transfer to the budget form. It just is kind of a tool to use. You'll still have to, once you hit the proposed publish within the budget, which is the blue buttons at the top, once you do hit that, you'll still have to put in a date. Just a little reminder there. This meeting information, so you are putting in the meeting information using that proposed publish button at the top of your public hearing notice that is in the budget system. That's the tab. You will see this meeting date, time, and location is blank or not available. You have to hit that proposed publish button in order to populate that information. And then you put in the date and time and location of that hearing and your contact information within that tab, and then it automatically populates to that form. Slide. And then keep in mind, I think there was a board that messed us up last year. Maybe it was another budget, but keep in mind the default for the AM PM or the meeting time is always AM. So if you do have a meeting, you know, in the afternoon, you know, make sure you just hit that AM to switch it to PM. Hasn't been too many mistakes on that, but unfortunately, if you do tell people that your meeting's going to be at 6 a.m. and is actually at 6 p.m., we're going to make you do the whole process again. Unfortunately, so just watch out for that. Just a helpful reminder. Most of you done a great job, so it hasn't been a big issue. So after you essentially propose your budget, you put in all that meeting information, you just hit the propose button, and then it'll give you a printout or a PDF essentially of what you need to send to the newspaper in order to publish for your hearing notice. And so that's automatically there. If you forget to save that PDF, or you forget, oh geez, where did I put that PDF? You can actually go back into the budget system, and there's a little print dialog on the top right hand side, and it'll say it'll say print to PDF as well. I think that's on the next slide here, Blake. Yeah, right here. So on the top right, if you just cancel out of that print screen, what you can do is you can just print that publication notice right from that print dialog. That will help you in case you forget, or if you need another copy for any reason, it'll print that. Or of course, you can also print your full budget there if you want to look at a paper copy and review it prior to publication is also helpful to do. So this is sometimes I do get this question a lot of, I forgot to put in some revenues between, I noticed it after I sent it to the newspaper. And the thing is, you can't adjust revenues without needing a new public hearing. That's not your control line like we've talked about. Expenditures can be adjusted, but they can only be adjusted down without needing a new public hearing. What you can do is if you do come in that situation, like I've already hit that proposed publish button, and kind of grays out when you do that. You need to make any adjustments. Say, the board decided to, before adoption, they decided to reduce expenditures. You can always just return that to draft and reduce expenditures or add a revenue that you maybe missed or maybe came in a little bit late. It is fine to do. Don't be afraid of returning things to draft, and then you'll just have to walk it through that process again through proposed publish. If you're just adding revenues or just changing expenditure down, you just walk it through the process. And if you do run in that situation, I'm happy to walk you through that process if need be. So after you've essentially, you've had the public hearing, the board has adopted the budget. Now that's an important step. Sometimes you get caught up, you go, you do public hearing, probably no one's going to show up, which is understandable, but you may get someone. But after you have that public hearing, make sure you adopt your budget. Sometimes I've had people say, oh, we did it. We just kind of moved on to the next step, but we forgot to adopt the budget. So make sure you adopt the budget. It usually happens right after that public hearing or within that meeting that the public hearing is at. But you could also adopt the budget at a subsequent meeting. That's it. You just put it on the next agenda and say, hey, we forgot to adopt the budget. You can always do that at the next meeting before the 30th. And then what you do is you just go in the budget system, you hit that adopt button, you put the date that it was adopted, and that's all it is. Then it gives you the next page here, Blake. It does give you this adopted page. And this is what you're certifying essentially. That's yes, we did adopt the budget. Someone needs to sign it. Usually, it doesn't. We don't really specify exactly who it needs to be. Someone just to attest to the fact that yes, this budget was indeed adopted. It can be a commission member, the president of the commission, or the board, or just the administrator. Your 911 coordinator as well could also sign this. And that's what that looks like. And so what you do have to do is you have to, essentially print out your full budget, and you include that signature page with your signature on it. That proof of publication as well needs to be submitted to the county auditor. And that can be a PDF. I know it's typically newspapers are giving you your affidavits as a PDF or just emailing it to you. As long as that essential notice of when your meeting notice is within there and it's legible, that is acceptable. If it's not legible, please request a new copy from the newspaper. And this is actually brand new for this fiscal year. We just had this implemented, and it's actually, you may have seen this documents button. So you can, by April 30th, you can still, you're probably working in the same building or relatively close to the county auditor. You can to walk down the paper isn't a big deal. To submit it to the county auditor, so you can run that wet signature and everything down. But what we are allowing this year is for you to upload documents. So you can scan the documents and upload it actually within the budget system using this documents button. And so you'll see this button. And what this is you essentially there's two spots that you can do your adoption. So essentially your full budget is what you're doing, that adoption page, and essentially your supplemental information, expenditures, and revenue pages from the system. And it's a PDF. You can do, I think you can do, images, but probably PDF is more likely place So what you can do is you just choose that file on your desktop that you saved and you upload it here, and that proof of publication as well. Once you get that PDF, you can choose that file and upload it right here as well. And it's pretty simple to do. So if you choose to use that, we do encourage it, but if you're not comfortable with it, or if you don't want to do it, or if you're nervous that that's not going to be there, feel free to run things down or up to the county auditor. But keep in mind, this still needs to be done by April 30th. And, once you upload a document, you can view that document and say, you'll see it in there. I don't have an example, but you'll kind of see it within that frame, and you can download it again. And if you happen to upload the wrong document, you upload, a picture of one of your kids, what you can do is you just replace it with the actual PDF. So that's not a big deal. And what the county auditors, once they get all these documents by April 30th, we encourage them, if they get it early, to check it early. So if we find any errors, those can be addressed and hopefully not miss the deadline. Essentially what they're looking at is that notice of public hearing was published, and you gave them that proof of publication. So that's the first check, and they need that proof of publication so they can check that 10 to 20-day rule. Of course, if that doesn't meet, they're going to say this budget isn't legal, and they're going to make you do it again. And the adopted expenditures for the budget do not exceed that published amount. So they're going to look at that proof of publication and say, okay, did this 911 board essentially adopt expenditures equal to or less than what they published? And as long as those three criteria are met, then you have a valid budget, and the county auditor is going to sign off on that. And so what you need to do in terms of filing with the Department of Management is nothing. Once your budget is adopted online, we would take a look at it, and the county auditor actually certifies it to us in the online system as well, and notifies us of any problems that may arise. And if there's any publication requirements, I'm sure we'll be in touch and walk you through that process again. So late budgets, if you happen to have a publication, snafu, the newspaper doesn't get in, they put it in the wrong year, anything like that, or you just, you miss an AM, PM, and it causes you to be late. And actually this March 15th deadline, this is an update, it should be April 30th, so sorry about that. There's no penalty that you would get from DOM, like we're not gonna, take any money away from you, we're not gonna let you spend so much. There's no formal extension process either for you. It's just a late budget, and you'll probably get an audit comment. County auditors may get a little confused because cities and counties, they do have a formal extension process they have to go through. You do not. So they may say, well, did you get, permission from DOM? And say, I don't need it. And they'll probably call me and say, hey, this board is late. They don't have a letter from you, and I'll explain to them they don't need one. But that's fine. We'll get through that process if in the unfortunate circumstance it does happen. But it's not a big deal if you're late, but try and get it on time as well. Don't be the lack of penalty prevent you from taking this process serious, because it can be a big issue if you don't get a budget in. And the next slide. So if you do happen to need to go over those expenditures, essentially that you adopted, sorry, that's a little small, is that total amount that you budgeted for the surcharge, or that total budget amount for the operating fund. So if you're anytime at the, during the fiscal year, that's why we kind of have you re-estimate fiscal year 2025 numbers. So if you're going to go over those amounts, it's probably good to file an amendment. Amendments are kind of follow the same 10 to 20 day guidelines. So keep that in mind. And those need to be completed by May 30th, same sort of thing. And the amendment system is through the budget system as well. So you just hit the amend, and it generates that proof of publication for you and what you publish in the newspaper. Same sort of process as the budget, but just a little bit smaller. You're just essentially putting in a number, say, hey, I increase expenditures from 500,000. I want to increase it 100,000, and you put a reason. So it's pretty simple. Then you hit the proposed publish button and go from there. I think that is same sort of screen for that hearing notice and printing. Of course, the publication is within there too. And I think then you'll go in and you'll adopt your amendment. Remember the board to adopt the amendment just like you're adopting the budget. And the adoption, there's an adoption certificate as well that you're going to submit to the county auditor. And there's that document upload now within the amendment section within the budget system. So feel free to use that or run down that signed paper. And also when you're using that documents button, you'll probably just have to scan in essentially your signature so that signature is available to the county auditor. So if there's any questions, happy to, sorry, I think I went a little long. Sorry about taking too much time, but if you have any questions, happy to entertain those. Feel free to send me emails or give me a call anytime.
Right, thank you, John.
Yep.
I think everyone pretty much has John's contact information, and I would just say, yeah, in the interest of time, if you have any questions, just follow up with John kind of offline. I think we can move on, but I do appreciate that. It's been a focus, I think, of our office to try to tighten up everyone's budget procedures. So hopefully everyone found today's session helpful. Recorded it on YouTube, like the normal 911 council meetings are. So if anyone wants to review it after the fact, please go ahead and do that. But thank you, John.
Yep, take care.
So moving on to my report, we talked through the budget presentation. The quick legislative update is there is no update. We still do not have our 34A bill draft back from the bill editor, so still nothing to talk through there. Annual forms, which are due January 1st, much better than last month, but we still have a number that remain. 22 service board memberships outstanding and 18 expenditure collection forms outstanding. As a reminder, on the expenditure collection form, the legal deadline for that is March, when we have to start withholding surcharge. So you still have a little time, but please do get that in as soon as possible. For GIS grants, we did have another county that did not meet the benchmarks in December. So for Q2, we ended up with a couple $1,000s less than normal, or the max that we passed through to local service boards. You can see the numbers there. And then you do have kind of a continuation of last month's discussion. One training fund, the extension of the online learning management system. Based on discussion last month, what we're proposing is through the end of the fiscal year, which is just under $9,000. With that, I will turn it over to Lynn with Zetron for an update on shared services.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Happy New Year, everyone. Next slide. As we kick off the new year, we're focusing on Clinton County, Polk County, and Des Moines PD deployments, which are underway for the first half of this year. Next slide. The map hasn't changed. And next slide. A reminder of the virtual learning management system, an online training portal. We've talked about this most months, but it's available to everyone, not just Iowa Shared Services. You can load your own training, making it available to your staff. If you want to sign up, just email Christy Wade at her email address there. And monthly stats, we've got 45 PSAPs signed up, 581 users, and some information about the classes. There we go. No problem. Just some numbers about the number of courses that people have enrolled in and that have been completed. We're very excited to see that people are using this system and getting the benefit. And next slide. As always, if you have questions or you want to get added to the distribution list for our periodic newsletter, we include tips and tricks for the Iowa Shared Services System and updates. Just send me an email at lynn.warren@zetron.com. And that is it for me. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Any questions for either Lynn or myself? Not, I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you. And as mentioned, our training fund request would be the online learning management system through June 30th, 2025. in the amount of $8,900. Does anyone have any questions? I know it was already explained, but does anyone have any questions about that or any comments? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to approve.
Dodd moves.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Jasper will second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor signal by saying aye.
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 Against, same sign, and motion carried. All right, do we have any technical advisories? Okay, hearing none, could I then get an update on Iowa Statewide Interoperable Communications Systems Board? Ms. Nichols?
Thank you, Chair. I just have a few things to update on and remind that we have a communications unit leader course that will be held April 1st through the 4th. That's going to be in Council Bluffs, maximum of 30 students. The registration will go live here shortly, so it will be on our website. That'll be a job form that you fill out. I just want to let everyone know that it is a two-step registration process. So after you fill that out and supply the prerequisites to me, then I supply those to the state training officer, and you will then receive an email from him. Probably it will come from Steve Warren or HSEMD. I don't know what it will look like, but you'll get a coupon code in your email and then have to register again through the FEMA website. So it's a two-step process. You do have to register twice for that course. And I just want you to know that. So check your emails often if you're interested in taking that course, and check your spam folder if you're not seeing those. Reach out to me if you have questions, if you've registered and you're not seeing that. Then you will also be receiving the course documents to your email right before the course the week before. There's also going to be a CommT or Communications Unit Technician course later in the spring. That'll be held in Cedar Rapids. It's held by Iowa instructors. That's a week-long course. We don't have the dates yet for that, but sometime probably April or May, also possibly June, not quite sure. And then we're also having a tri-state ComEx tabletop in June and a functional exercise in states September. That's going to be held in Dubuque alongside Wisconsin and Illinois, working all together to make sure our communications work cross-border. The only other thing that I have for this group is to let you know that the legislative night for DPS is January 15th. We'll have the mobile command out so our legislators can see what that vehicle looks like, and our annual report is done on the website if anybody wants to take a look. Unless there's any questions for me, that's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. Could we please get an update from the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, Cybersecurity, and Infrastructure Security? Mr. Myers.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
I can.
All right, good morning, and thank you for the time today, as always. Apologize for not being here last month. We had some things pop up suddenly that precluded me from being able to attend. A couple of notable publications that have come out recently. The first one is a guide to protect communications infrastructure from the People's Republic of China threat actors. These threat actors have been able to infiltrate and compromise a number of major telecommunications providers worldwide. This guide has recommended actions for both commercial and government providers to take in order to identify anomalous behavior, vulnerabilities, and also ways to respond to some sort of cyber incident. This information is geared towards reducing existing vulnerabilities and improving configuration habits, and also limiting potential entry points for adversaries to get into. A couple of links are on this slide. These are devoted solely to this. One is the guide itself, and then the other is our general webpage for state-sponsored cyber threat actors, specifically the People's Republic of China. There's a lot of information posted there that agencies of all size can scale to fit their organizations, and it is encouraged that you take a look at that page and also that document. One other thing that came out recently is kind of a distillation of what we've seen in some of those larger guides. This is basically a mobile communications best practice guidance. This is a quick 1 or 2 page document that really looks at this idea of if you're going to have a state-sponsored actor that's affiliated with the PRC or others, look at trying to get into a network for espionage or other types of specific targeting. What would that look like? This does outline who would be considered a highly targeted individual who may possess information of interest to the threat actors. This would include customer call records, theft, private communications compromise that we've seen elsewhere. And it also includes best practices for personnel, which include updated processes for multi-factor authentication, suggestions on how, when, why, and ways to implement VPNs or virtual private networks. This is available for download as well at the link listed. This is a quick read, but it is information dense and is going to be beneficial for those that have the time to look at that guidance and potentially consider implementing it. A couple of case studies next to talk about. This is insights from our red team. This is based on recommendations that have been gathered in order to improve cybersecurity posture based on lessons learned from actual tests or actual events. The key lessons from this include that the organization that this document focuses on had insufficient technical controls to prevent and detect malicious activities. So the way that basically plays out to an agency is that you may have a large network where you are doing critical functions for the protection of the public, but you may not necessarily have everything you need in place to prevent someone from getting onto your network that shouldn't be there, and then also to detect their activity once they're present. The organization's staff also required training and resources to detect configurations and malicious activities, but they were not always successful. In this case, the organization's leadership minimized the business risk of known attack vectors for the organization, and that was also something that shows up in the report. So that red team read is a good one, and it does have some valuable information as well. On the next slide, an emerging technology, artificial intelligence. Recently, we've seen more and more instances of artificial intelligence making its way into public safety communications answering points and other types of communication centers. This is a very broad document that is designed to apply to industries of all types, but it does provide ideas and guidance to agencies on things to consider with respect to AI adoption. This is focused on, say, AI provided by cloud providers or other things that may be incorporated into critical infrastructure. Highlights of this framework basically include collaborative guidance that was developed to mitigate risk, safeguard consumer rights if you are an agency that does have forward-facing interfaces with the public, and also transparent AI practices. That is one of the main concerns about AI, is how transparent will those implementations and adoptions actually be. It does have a comprehensive coverage that looks at vulnerabilities that are unique to AI, such as attacks using AI, attacks targeting AI systems, and also system design failures that may pop up once AI is adopted. This is a very broad document that encompasses all of the Department of Homeland Security, not just CISA. It is a lengthy read, but it is geared specifically towards those you're in your agency or your partners that would be interfacing directly with artificial intelligence and how that may look in the future for your organization. On the next slide, more programmatic updates. We did have an updated technical assistance catalog that hit the streets in mid-November. This does include the PSAP swatting poster that we worked on the state of Iowa with last year. That is now an offering in addition to the ransomware and TDOS posters. There has been an expansion of state-sponsored courses and ways to execute and deliver them, which include tactical dispatcher, information technology service unit leader, and also incident communications manager. Also new to the catalog are the primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency, also known as PACE planning toolkit, and updates to the Cyber Resilient 911 offerings, and a specific flow chart that kind of outlines how that could look for an agency as they look at potentially requesting assistance from us on Cyber Resilient 911. On the next slide, the expansion of those Cyber Resilient 911 offerings are listed. You've got some old standbys there, but some of them have been updated, such as the PSAP Cyber Awareness Seminar. This has been kind of expanded a little bit to look at advanced operations and administration of those operations in a more cyber secure environment. The LMR Cyber Awareness webinar has also been updated. Some of the workshops have been updated as well for the awareness and threat assessment and response workshop, The standby full cyber assessment is still available, but now there's also some updates to the post-assessment workshop and also the post-cyber incident after action review. No one wants to necessarily have a cyber incident occur within their center, but if one were to happen, there is now the ability and the direction and mechanism to deliver an after action review that will help the agency sort through what happened, when it happened, perhaps why it happened, and how to move forward, and along with best practices and recommendations going forward. Finally, regional news of note, the big thing taking place right now within CISA, at least in the communication space, is technical assistance. Scoping calls are taking place. This is happening in all 4 Region 7 states. Course announcements will be sent out soon by stakeholders, so look for updates on that from your SWIC. And then also, too, we do have some key things happening in Kansas City with respect to the FIFA World Cup that's coming up in 2026. They are doing joint technical assistance requests between the 2 states that surround the Kansas City Metro, and all those offerings will be open for regional attendance. So if you're not able to make a course that may be in your state, that may also be an offering in Kansas City as well. Of course, your agency will be responsible for travel and other associated personnel expenses for attending. That is all I have for the month, Mr. Chair. I can go ahead and take any questions.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. I think it was already mentioned, we don't really have any legislative issues to speak of that I'm aware of. Is there any legislative issues anyone wants to bring up? Okay, hearing none. Do we have any information sharing by council members? Okay, not hearing any. I do have just one. I want to point out that we still have 2 vacancies on our council from the Iowa Peace Officers Association and the large Iowa Teleco Association. If you have any contacts with folks in either one of those organizations, and I'm sure we all do, please try to encourage them and their association to appoint someone to this council. With 2 vacancies, it kind of puts us behind the 8 ball every time we're trying to make sure we have a quorum. So please, let's get those filled as soon as possible. They've been open for quite some time. Any other information from council members? Okay, hearing none. I don't have any unfinished or new business or travel requests. Do we have any business from the floor of the folks there in the room? Okay, do we have any business from anyone joining us virtually? Okay, hearing none, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Lynn, motion to adjourn.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Chair will second.
All right, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, and we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a safe day.